Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're tackling something that I guarantee bothers literally all of us at our core. We look around the world, we see blatant unfairness, and, well, we instinctively just feel this massive sense of outrage, right? But instead of only focusing on the emotional side of it, we're going to break down the underlying logic. We are going to figure out how we can possibly reconcile the really harsh realities of our world with these massive, universal concepts of generosity, mercy, and ultimate fairness.
So I want you to start by picturing a very typical, all-too-familiar news story. You open your feed or you turn on the TV and you see a glaring example of the strong just absolutely crushing the weak. On one side, you've got the strong oppressor. They use their power, they win unjustly, they take what isn't theirs, and they honestly seem to get away with it completely. And then on the other side, you have the weak, oppressed person. This person loses their fundamental rights, they have zero avenue for recourse, and they're just left entirely in the dark. Decades pass, the oppressor eventually dies in the absolute comfort of their ill-gotten gains. And the oppressed individual? They die in utter despair, never having seen even a single drop of fairness. It's a visceral, deeply unsettling picture, isn't it?
And that brings us to, honestly, the most critical question we could possibly ask. Does this account truly close here? I mean, just pause and deeply consider that for a second. If this deeply unequal, incredibly frustrating ending is really the final chapter of human existence, what does that actually mean? The oppressor wins, the oppressed loses, and then just nothing? The screen goes black? If you're like most people, your brain immediately rejects this. It feels like a totally unfinished sentence. It feels absurd.
To make matters even worse, we have to look at the sheer scale of this problem. A deeply reflective observer, a trustworthy friend to our own intellects, might look at the state of our world and note a pretty devastating statistic. True justice, and I mean the kind of pure, flawless justice that is actually fitting of absolute divine dignity and boundless generosity, is practically absent here. In fact, it's rarely applied, not even 1 in 1,000 times. The vast, overwhelming majority of the time, the oppressor lives in the comfort of their power, and the victim passes away in the suffocating grip of their helplessness. The math of earthly justice is, frankly, incredibly bleak.
This brings us to Section 1, the logic of generosity and mercy. Let's examine what these universal virtues actually demand of reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it demystifies a word we use every single day: generosity. We often think of generosity as just a nice, warm feeling, right? But logically, true generosity demands action. It introduces this concept of bestowing or in'am. If generosity is truly, genuinely generosity, it can't just sit passively in a vacuum. It demands an outlet. It absolutely requires the act of granting of grace and favors. So if an entity is infinitely generous, that generosity literally must manifest. It has to complete its action by actually benefiting others. It cannot remain dormant.
And that exact same logical framework applies perfectly to mercy too. True mercy cannot be cut short before reaching its ultimate conclusion. Think about that in the context of our oppressed person from earlier. If genuine absolute mercy actually exists in the fabric of reality, it logically cannot end in the permanent unresolved despair of the oppressed. I mean, a mercy that simply watches a victim suffer, offers zero ultimate comfort, and allows the story to permanently end in a tragedy, that isn't true mercy. It actually contradicts its own definition. True mercy has to see the healing through to the very, very end.
So, let's put these two realities side by side. We've got the incomplete, broken justice of this world on one hand, and the inherent, active logic of mercy and generosity on the other. This leaves us staring at a very stark binary choice. Option 1. These universal concepts of infinite mercy and true generosity are completely fake, they're just illusions, and the universe is actually just a cold, meaningless void where the strong simply eat the weak. Or Option 2. Because these concepts are real, and they absolutely demand completion, there must be another realm. There has to be another ground of existence where these virtues are perfectly and flawlessly completed.
So the crucial point is this: if we recognize the logic of mercy, the story cannot simply end at the grave. The unfinished business of this earthly realm absolutely necessitates a continuation. Because justice isn't served here even 1 in 1,000 times, the entire account is basically being deferred. It's being bundled up and forwarded to a great tribunal. A supreme, ultimate gathering in the afterlife, where the scales are finally balanced, where the oppressor is held accountable once and for all, and where the oppressed is fully compensated.
Moving on to Section 2, Delayed Divine Justice. This is where we find a transcendent resolution to the pain of worldly oppression.
And this brilliantly illustrates where we find ultimate comfort for the human heart. This is from the Quran, Surah Ibrahim, chapter 14, verse 42. Allah is not unaware of what the oppressors do.
He only delays them to a certain day. Notice the incredible gravity of those words. It directly addresses the exact frustration we opened with. The universe isn't blind. The divine isn't just ignoring the plight of the weak. The oppressor's actions are fully known, fully recorded. The punishment hasn't been canceled at all. It has merely been postponed to a day where justice can be executed perfectly, completely matching the immense scale of divine dignity and generosity.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a powerful, provocative thought to chew on this week. Does knowing injustice is delayed or thinking it will never be resolved give you more peace, and why? Look, we all have to confront the unfairness of the world, but how you frame the ending of that story changes literally everything about how you live today. Does your mind find peace in a story that just ends in tragedy, or does it crave the logical completion of a great tribunal? I highly encourage you to spend some time in deep self-reflection on your own psychological need for ultimate justice. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep questioning the story behind the story.